What if the very part of you that you've tried to bury, silence, and shame is the part that holds the key to your freedom? We are born into a world that rewards light. We're taught to smile through discomfort, to present confidence even in fear, and to chase success while hiding insecurity. And in the process, we learn a dangerous habit, the habit of emotional editing. From childhood, many of us are trained to censor ourselves. Don't cry, we're told. Don't be angry. Don't be selfish. The result? We grow into adults who don't know what to do with the full spectrum of our humanity. We smile when we're aching. We congratulate others when we feel jealous. We swallow rage, package grief, and decorate disappointment with false positivity. And yet beneath all of this civility, something stirs. A whisper, a presence, a subtle pressure under the surface. You hear it when you fail. You feel it when you're alone. It speaks not in polite phrases, but in raw fragments. You're not good enough. You'll never measure up. They don't really know you. You're pretending. We label this presence the inner critic, the saboteur, the negative self-talk. But what if it's more than that? What if it's not just a collection of toxic thoughts, but a character, a force within, a shadow self that is alive and waiting to be heard? The voice we learn to hate, everyone has it. The voice inside that tells us we're inadequate. It doesn't wait for a formal invitation. It shows up at the edge of risk, at the peak of joy, even in quiet triumph. It mocks, it warns, it pulls you back. Most of us try to silence it. We meditate, hoping to dissolve it in breath. We journal, trying to write it into clarity. We hustle harder, trying to outrun it with praise. We drown it in self-help quotes, telling ourselves we're enough until the words become hollow. But the voice remains, and when we can't silence it, we shame ourselves for its presence. Why can't I just be more confident? Why am I so negative? What's wrong with me? But maybe the question isn't why the voice exists. Maybe the real question is, what is it trying to say? Where the inner critic comes from. To understand the voice, we have to trace its roots. That inner whisper didn't appear overnight. It was built, brick by brick, through experiences, expectations, and emotional wounds. Each criticism you've ever absorbed, each betrayal, each dismissal, each moment where your real feelings were not welcome, all contributed to it. The voice is not simply negative thinking. It is a psychological echo of all the ways the world told you to be less than your full self. When you were scolded for crying, the voice learned that sadness was weakness. When you were ignored in favor of others, the voice learned to doubt your worth. When you were rejected, the voice learned that love was conditional. It began as protection, a primitive attempt to guard you from pain. If the voice could remind you how dangerous vulnerability was, maybe you'd avoid the next wound. Maybe you'd stay safe. But here's the paradox. The voice that was formed to protect you also became the voice that keeps you small. The mask and the mirror. To survive, we built masks. We crafted the version of ourselves that would be accepted, the overachiever, the people pleaser, the caretaker, the chameleon, the perfectionist, and these masks became habits. Personas we wear so convincingly, we almost forget they're not all of who we are. But our shadow doesn't forget. It waits. Every time we betray our truth to maintain appearance, the shadow grows louder. Every time we suppress a real emotion to meet expectations, the shadow grows stronger. The shadow isn't trying to break you, it's trying to break through. What if we've got it all backwards? Let's pause here. What if everything we've been taught about negativity is wrong? What if your sadness isn't weakness, but sacred information? What if your anger isn't dangerous, but deeply intelligent? What if your fear isn't cowardice, but a compass pointing to what matters? We live in a culture obsessed with the light. Happiness is monetized. Smiles are currency. Confidence is demanded. Vulnerability is whispered only in therapy rooms. But what happens when your pain refuses to stay quiet? When your inner turmoil resists the script? We call it anxiety, depression, imposter syndrome, emotional dysregulation. But maybe it's something older, wiser, waiting. The wisdom of the shadow, Nietzsche and Jung. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." He wasn't glorifying dysfunction. He was pointing to the truth that brilliance does not rise from perfection, but from depth. Carl Jung would later give this truth a name. The shadow, the unconscious aspects of the self we repress, deny, or disown. He saw that true healing and individuation come not from perfection, but from integration. Imagine walking on a bright street. The sun is warm, the sky is blue, but behind you trails a shadow, perfectly shaped, completely silent, and entirely connected to your body. You can't see it unless you turn around, but it's always there, echoing your every move. Your psychological shadow is just as real and just as present. The shadow is watching and working. Here's the truth we rarely admit. Even if you pretend your shadow doesn't exist, it still drives your behavior. You're more tired than usual after a harmless comment from a friend. You pick a fight with your partner but don't know why. You scroll endlessly on social media and feel drained afterward. That's not random. That's shadow activity. Suppressed envy turns into self-criticism. Unacknowledged anger morphs into passive aggression. Hidden fear transforms into procrastination. The shadow isn't passive. It adapts. It infiltrates your habits, your relationships, your self-concept. The beginning of a new relationship. But this doesn't mean the shadow is evil. This isn't a horror story. It's a redemption arc. The shadow isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to wake you up. It is the wounded, intelligent, deeply feeling part of you that got exiled along the way. And now it wants to come home. Your shadow is the map to your hidden values. It holds the clues to your boundaries, your purpose, your voice. But you can't decode it if you keep treating it like a threat. So the journey begins not with a battle, but with a question. What part of me have I been afraid to meet? We think we are in control until a moment of anger, shame, or sabotage reveals who's really driving. Behind the curtain of control, you wake up determined to be kind, focused, and productive. But by midday, someone says something that hits a nerve. Suddenly, you snap, overreact, withdraw, or go passive-aggressive. You tell yourself, that wasn't me, but it was. It was a part of you that's usually hidden, a part you don't fully understand. This is what happens when the shadow takes the wheel. We imagine ourselves as unified beings, rational, evolved, conscious. But the truth is, most of our behavior is governed not by what we know, but by what we've buried. What we suppress doesn't die, it directs. Your shadow isn't asleep, it's active, it's alert. It's waiting for moments of stress, rejection, or emotional vulnerability to leap forward and run the show. Micro moments of shadow exposure. It's not just in explosive reactions. The shadow lives in micro moments. You procrastinate on an opportunity you've dreamed about for years. You sabotage a relationship just when it becomes serious. You overcommit to work that drains you, then resent it. You apologize constantly, even when you've done nothing wrong. You mock someone else's success because it reminds you of what you fear you'll never be. None of these are random. They are symptoms of unprocessed content, of emotional data that was never fully allowed to live in the light. Emotional repression, a dangerous strategy in disguise. From an evolutionary standpoint, emotional repression was once adaptive. Showing weakness could mean social exclusion or physical threat. So we learned to tuck away emotions that felt dangerous. But in modern life, this strategy becomes sabotage. You repress anger, so it turns inward as depression. You repress desire, so it returns as resentment. You repress fear, so it mutates into control, rigidity, or overthinking. Clinical psychologist Dr. Gabor Mate calls this the cost of survival. What keeps us safe emotionally as children often keeps us stuck as adults. The cycles we can't break. Let's break this down with an example. Meet Alex. Alex is praised for being nice, easygoing, and selfless. But Alex often feels exhausted. His kindness feels forced. He overcommits. He struggles to say no, then privately blames others for taking advantage of him. Underneath Alex's persona lives an unacknowledged anger, a shadow formed when, as a child, expressing his needs led to guilt or rejection. That part was buried, but it didn't disappear. Now, Alex's shadow governs his boundaries, not directly, but through sabotage. He'll agree to something, then find ways to withdraw emotionally, arrive late, or make passive-aggressive comments. He's not aware of this cycle. It feels justified. But it's really his shadow protecting a younger self who learned that being nice meant being safe. Relationship patterns, projection and repetition. Nowhere does the shadow operate more actively than in relationships. Why? Because intimacy triggers history. Every unresolved childhood dynamic resurfaces when we attach to someone. If your love was conditional growing up, you might seek partners who are emotionally unavailable, trying unconsciously to earn the love you never received. This is the psychological concept of repetition compulsion, reliving early emotional injuries in hopes of rewriting them. But without shadow awareness, we don't rewrite anything. We just repeat. Projection, seeing what we won't own. Another key shadow dynamic is projection. Psychologist Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Projection is when we disown a part of ourselves and instead see it in others. For example, if you deny your ambition, you'll resent ambitious people. If you suppress your anger, you'll call others too aggressive. If you repress your sensuality, you may judge others as too provocative. If you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable, you might mock those who cry openly. Projection is like a mirror, but a warped one. It shows you not what others are, but what you're not allowing yourself to be. Self-sabotage, the shadow's emergency brake. Let's talk about one of the most common shadow behaviors, self-sabotage. Why do we, ghost people we care about, quit projects right before success, downplay our strengths, stay in toxic jobs or relationships? It's not because we're lazy, unworthy, or weak. It's because some part of us believes that growth equals danger. The shadow formed around our core wounds. If you were made to feel invisible, failure might feel familiar, but visibility might feel terrifying. If you were punished for standing out, blending in may feel safer, even if it kills your soul. So when you move toward expansion, the shadow panics. Danger ahead, it warns. Shrink, retreat, hide. The prison of identity. Ironically, the shadow forms not just from pain, but from praise. Were you always the smart one, the strong one, the good one? These roles become identity traps. We cling to them even when they no longer serve us. The strong one can't ask for help. The smart one can't admit confusion. The good one can't express anger or selfish needs. Each praised identity becomes a box, and the shadow holds everything we had to abandon to fit inside. The cost of repression. Make no mistake, the cost of repression is cumulative. Chronic fatigue, anxiety, burnout, addictions, panic attacks, imposter syndrome, emotional numbness, cycles of unfulfilling relationships. These aren't random symptoms. They are alarm bells from the soul, signals that a vital part of you is trapped in the basement of consciousness, banging on the door, begging to be seen. Turning toward the shadow. So what do we do? The first step isn't to fix or fight the shadow. The first step is to turn toward it, to notice the moment you overreact and ask, whose voice is this? To observe your judgments and ask, what am I refusing to own in myself? To catch your self-sabotage and ask, what part of me is afraid of being seen? Awareness is not the end, but it's the beginning. It breaks the trance. It slows the autopilot. It lets you step off the stage of your conditioning and into a deeper truth. We don't heal by cutting parts of ourselves off. We heal by bringing the lost children of the psyche back home. Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. What does it mean to integrate the shadow? By now, you've met your shadow, not in full, but in fragments, moments, behaviors, fears. You've begun to see how it operates, not as a monster, but as a protector, not as an enemy, but as a wounded part, not as weakness, but as wisdom that was once too overwhelming to hold. So what now? Here's the truth. You don't eliminate the shadow, you integrate it. You invite it out of exile, into conscious partnership. Integration means turning the unconscious into the conscious. It means allowing every emotion, every instinct, every memory, its rightful place at the inner table. As Jung famously said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The myth of fixing yourself. Let's debunk a lie right now. Healing is not self-improvement. It is not becoming someone better. It is becoming someone whole. You were never broken, but you were fragmented. The shadow is where your younger selves live. Those who weren't allowed to cry, scream, ask, need, dream. Integration is how you retrieve them, from repression to dialogue. Here's a simple but radical idea. Instead of silencing the parts you don't like, what if you started talking to them? This is the work of inner dialogue. Psychotherapist Richard Schwartz, founder of Internal Family Systems, IFS, describes the psyche as composed of many parts. Some are managers, keeping you safe. Others are firefighters, extinguishing pain. And others are exiles, wounded, hidden. In integration work, we begin a relationship with each part, not to control it, but to understand it. Hello, anger. What are you protecting? Dear shame. When did you first arrive? Fear. I see you. What do you want me to know? When you shift from judgment to curiosity, the part softens. It's no longer screaming. It's being heard, reparenting, giving yourself what you never received. Many shadows formed because of what we lacked. Unconditional love, emotional safety, validation boundaries. Permission to feel reparenting is a practice of giving those things to yourself, not symbolically, literally. When an old pain is triggered, abandonment for instance, you pause. You place a hand on your heart. You whisper to your inner child, I'm here now, I'm not going to leave you. Your feelings make sense, I believe you. You are safe with me. These are not cheesy affirmations. They are neurological repatternings. When repeated, they form new internal pathways of safety. Case story: the man who couldn't cry. Let's meet David. David grew up with a father who believed that tears were weakness. He learned early, emotions made him vulnerable. So David became composed, logical, respected. But inside, he felt cold. His relationships were distant. When his mother died, he didn't cry at the funeral. He went back to work the next day. Through therapy, David began shadow work. He discovered an inner boy, about age 6, who once cried in front of his dad and was mocked. That boy was exiled. With time, David began a nightly ritual. He'd write to the boy, letting him speak. At first, it was clumsy, but then the letters got deeper. One night, David wrote, I'm sorry I left you behind just to feel safe. You deserved more. He cried, for the first time in years. It wasn't sadness, it was reunion. The art of holding emotions without collapsing. One reason we avoid our shadow is fear of being overwhelmed. We think, if I feel this grief, I'll never come back. If I express this anger, I'll destroy something. If I admit my shame, I'll dissolve. But healing is not about becoming the emotion. It's about holding it. Like a loving parent holds a child's tantrum. This is the work of containment. Clinical psychologist Dr. Dan Siegel calls this name it to tame it. When we identify and allow an emotion without reacting, it begins to dissolve its grip. Ah, that's rage. It's here. I see it. I breathe with it. Emotion moves when it's welcomed. It stagnates when it's judged. Rewriting the narrative. Most shadows are not just emotional. They are narrative. They are stories we absorbed unconsciously. I'm too much. My needs are dangerous. Success will make me a target. Love always ends in pain. Integration requires updating the story, not by denial, but by evolution. One tool, transformational writing. Example, take a painful memory, write it from your younger self's perspective, then rewrite it from your present self, with compassion and power. Let the adult meet the child. Let them rewrite the meaning together. Integration is not perfection. It's permission. Many people fear shadow work because they believe it means they must become perfect. But integration isn't about being good. It's about being real. It means sometimes you'll still feel envy, but you won't let it rule. Sometimes you'll be triggered, but you'll pause instead of project. Sometimes you'll revisit pain, but now with a companion, your conscious self. This is liberation. Not because the shadow disappears, but because it no longer has to fight to be seen. Shadow gifts. The light. Hidden in the dark. Here's a secret. Your shadow isn't just made of wounds. It also contains your buried gold. Psychologist Robert Johnson called this the golden shadow. These are qualities you disowned because they're too powerful, too bold, too bright. Your creativity, your sensuality, your leadership, your voice, your wildness, your desire. You thought you were too much. You weren't. You were magnificent and scared. Integration gives that power back. Light and shadow are not enemies, but dance partners in the sacred choreography of being. Unknown. The transformation. After integration. Imagine waking up in the morning and feeling whole. Not fractured, not split, but fully yourself. You carry shadows, yes, but they no longer haunt you. Instead, they add depth. They enrich your experience. You've discovered a radical truth. Your darkness is not a burden to bear, but a resource to wield. Gone are the days of constant inner warfare. Instead, there's an inner alliance, an unexpected friendship with the parts of you that once frightened or ashamed you. You're no longer half a person pretending to be whole. You are whole, authentic, real. Light and shadow, the yin and yang of the self. In nature, light cannot exist without shadow. Sunlight creates shadows. The moon's glow waxes and wanes with the darkness. Day turns into night. Your psyche mirrors this cosmic dance. Trying to be only light is like planting a garden, but refusing to dig into the soil. You may see flowers, but the roots remain shallow, fragile. Shadow work is the digging. It's tending the soil so the roots grow strong. Only by embracing both your brilliance and your brokenness can you bloom fully. Courage, not the absence of fear, but the presence of truth. Authenticity requires courage, not the absence of doubt or discomfort, but the willingness to show up fully despite them. When you welcome your shadow, you practice the highest form of bravery, saying, "I don't have it all together," without shame, owning your mistakes and imperfections, allowing vulnerability to be a source of strength, embracing your complexity instead of simplifying yourself to fit in. This courage radiates outward. It inspires others to stop hiding too. The spiritual perspective, darkness as a pathway to light. Across cultures and spiritual traditions, darkness is revered, not feared. In Taoism, yin, darkness, balances yang, light. In Jungian psychology, shadow integration leads to individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Mystics describe dark nights of the soul as transformative rites of passage. Indigenous teachings often speak of embracing the shadow self as reclaiming lost power. Your darkness is a portal, not a prison. Through it, you access profound wisdom, creativity, and connection. Answering the call, your hero's journey continues. The shadow journey is not a one-time event, it's ongoing, like a river that flows endlessly. You'll encounter old wounds, new challenges, fresh revelations. But now you have tools, language, and compassion. You know how to listen. You know how to hold. You are the hero of your own story, not by conquering darkness, but by befriending it. A final story, the dancer and the shadow. Once, a dancer feared her own shadow. She tried to outrun it with every pirouette, every leap. But the shadow followed, always there, sometimes flickering, sometimes looming. One day, exhausted, she stopped. She faced her shadow. Instead of fleeing, she invited it to dance. And in that dance, something miraculous happened. Her movements became richer, fuller, more alive. The shadow was no longer a weight dragging her down, but a partner lifting her higher. Your invitation: dance with your shadow. Today, I invite you to stop running, to turn toward your darkness with open arms, to listen deeply to the whispers beneath the noise, to give voice to the parts you've silenced, to hold your chaos, your pain, your longing, and to let that raw material birth your dancing star. Conclusion: your shadow is not your enemy, it is your greatest teacher, your deepest guide. Embrace your wholeness, light and dark intertwined. Become the authentic, courageous soul you were always meant to be. The dance has already begun. Will you join